Today's date is the 5th, right?
4th, March
4th, Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Mr. Executive Director, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Chairman Pat Jacobs,
Present.
Vice Chairman Stephen Turcott,
Present.
Commissioner Brian Biesmeyer,
Present.
Commissioner Shelley Blackmore,
Present.
Commissioner Rolando Flores,
Present.
Commissioner Rodney Held,
Present.
Commissioner Frank Krentz,
Present.
Commissioner John Ladd. Commissioner John Ladd, are you present on virtually or on the telephone? Circle back later. Commissioner Tina Thompson,
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum of the voting members of the commission. I would also like to call real quick the ex officio members just
You
for
do.
Thomas Bushatsky, Director. Director Bushatsky, are you present? Robin Sahid, Executive Deputy Commissioner of the State Land Department, are you present? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Confused. To go a little out of order, before I call to the public, we have one new member. And we usually offer the new member an opportunity to give us a short bio or your appointing authority and your interest in water if you wish. May I introduce you then as Mr. Flores, right?
Yes, thank you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rolando Flores. I am from Tucson, Arizona. U of A graduate, proud U of A graduate. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to share or what you'd like me to share, but I'm currently on the Basco Yaqui Tribal Council. We have, as a tribe, general interest in water, water protection, water management, conservation, so on and so forth. I landed here as part of the Intertribal Council of Arizona, and I'm happy to be here, eager to learn and observe and provide as much input as I can. So thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. And if you have any questions, ask the man to the right.
That's him.
He's been on longer than I am. He was the past executive director. Okay,
All right.
good. You are welcome. Frank, do you want to just introduce yourself? First time I've seen you in person, I think.
Okay, Frank Krantz. My family is a cow-calf operator in southern Arizona. I'm a fifth-generation rancher. I serve on conservation districts for my local conservation board out of Whitewater Draw. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here and lend a hand.
Nice to see you in person.
Sir, you too.
And I wanted, if any public was online, I wanted them to know you too. And so now I will do a call to the public. Is there any member of the public who wishes to be heard? You can be heard for 3 minutes at this point in time. We will also have a call to the public at the end of the agenda. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard?
Unmute everybody, just
I see,
unmute, yeah. We'll unmute everybody and give.
give them a chance. We'll unmute you now. Anyone who is a member of the public who wishes to be heard? Hearing none, we'll move on to the agenda. You'll be muted from this point forth, and so if you will be having a call at the end. Okay, the next item on the agenda is review and consideration of action to approve the November 13th, 2025 and November 20th. I'm sorry, November, this says 25, it's 24, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's.
We'll correct that, 24. November 20th, 24 meetings. minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
on the November. Make sure I get them in order. Sorry, for the November 13th minutes, just a point of clarification on page 4. The very last paragraph, and Ruben, I wrote this, I'll hand it to you.
Okay,
There's the second sentence where I was talking about the applicant may be needing to file a statement of claimant. Just want to clarify that should also include it in a valid basis of right. So there are two separate filings that need to be filed in order to have a water right. So I have this written down, I'll just give it to you. So you don't have to worry about it.
okay, thank you.
And then in the November, what's it? What's the other one, the 20th? I can't see the date. Oh, yeah, the November 20th.
Yes.
On the bottom of page 2, the last sentence, as chairman held, that should be commissioner held. Even though big shoes to fill over here. Page 4, at the very end, the last sentence on the last paragraph, page 4 should say commissioner held. And thought I had one other one, but maybe it didn't. How is it, I guess?
Would you write those? Make those and post those in the final version. Thank you, sir.
Any other discussion on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I have some discussion. This is Commissioner Thompson.
You're recognized, Commissioner.
For the November 13th minutes, page, I think it was page 4. Yeah, page 4, second to the last paragraph, where it says Commissioner Thompson. I think you missed inquired there.
Page 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That should be Commissioner Thompson inquired if the WNRCD.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? I will consider that the motion made was to cover any of these corrections. So we're voting not only on the written document, but the corrections that you've heard. If anybody else would like to have the corrections you read, we'll have a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay? May the record show that it was unanimous of all members of the commission present. The next item of business is a presentation for a closeout presentation for grant 22-210. Mr. Director,
Yes.
you have the floor.
So we did have yep, so this is a closeout project from the Friends of the Verde River. Mr. Hudson Kiefer, are you present with us today?
I am.
Okay, thank you. So if you could introduce yourself, and I will run this presentation for you. If you'd like, just tell me when to advance and we'll go from there.
Wonderful. My name is Hudson Keffer. I'm the restoration technician and GIS specialist with Friends of the Verde River. This presentation was presented by our restoration programs manager, but she had another obligation today, so I'm filling in. Fortunately, I have been involved with the entirety of this project, so I'm capable to do so. Some background info on our organization, Friends of the Verde River. We are a Verde Valley nonprofit working collaboratively to sustain flows, restore habitat, and engage communities for a healthy Verde River system. Our mission and vision are displayed here, and this is our small team on the right. You can go ahead and move this slide. So if you're not familiar, the Verde River is in central Arizona. Its headwaters are up in Williams, Flagstaff, way north from Paulden and the Chino River Basin. And it goes all the way down to Scotts through Fountain Hills, where it meets with the Salt. It supplies about 500 miles of really important habitat, including wild and scenic sections in the Fossil Creek section, as well as the Lower Verde River. And so it's a really valuable watershed for us here in Phoenix. Supplies about 30% of drinking water to Phoenix residents. Next slide, please. Within Friends of the Verde River, we operate and manage the Verde Watershed Restoration Coalition, which is a really great partnership between federal agencies, between municipalities, between nonprofits like ourselves. So this is kind of the collaborative agency in which we get most of our work done. It allows us to manage and to work together just to plan, make sure that we're being efficient within our watershed and managing them properly. Next slide, please. All right, so now to talk about the project. So this is a project from 89A to Big Knotty Picnic Area. It's a pretty large stretch with a lot of Forest Service land, a lot of private land, ranch land, and it's all within the riparian area. The overarching goal of this project was to improve the riparian habitat and the stream function by managing invasive plants that threaten the biodiversity and long-term health of the Verde River. Within that goal, our objectives are to manage those invasive plants throughout this stretch, to provide job training and effective restoration practices, and to create effective river stewards through volunteer and landowner involvement and hands-on work, monitoring and maintenance, and teaching people about ecological, social, and economic importance of these riparian areas. Next slide, please. Our action items within this project were to treat, monitor, and retreat riparian invasive plant growth in the project area by contracting with, training, and supervising crews from Arizona Conservation Corps, Conservation Legacy, they're based out of Durango, Colorado, and VET, or otherwise known as Verde Earth Technologies. They're a veteran-owned conservation company. To plan and implement 2 volunteer events, one annually in the project area of the river to engage volunteers, stewardship activities. Volunteers were required to attend training that included education about the value of the healthy native riparian habitat in the Verde River ecosystem, and to plan and implement outreach to landowners in the project area to communicate the threats invasive plants pose to riparian areas and the importance of removing invasive plants for the health of the river. And on the right, you can see this is kind of a project overview of what was actually accomplished on this map. So it has our 3 years of monitoring data, as well as outlined areas of all of our treatment areas, as well as inventories of all the invasive plant species within those areas. Next slide, please. All right, so for our methods, we have a pretty rigorous monitoring protocol, monitoring inventory protocol that we completed annually within this stretch through this project. And that monitoring protocol includes what we call a rapid assessment, which is kind of it's a qualitative assessment of the habitat that we're within. So that includes things like native vegetation and percent relative cover of different native species, as well as invasive species. It includes an invasive species inventory, which you can actually see on the bottom right, kind of what is included there. So the size of the stand, we do a perimeter of the stand, so we're able to calculate acreages, what species it is. We take before and after photos, and we also take long-term vegetation composition plots. Now this is a randomized plot survey that we do in order to be able to have this long-term data, and our goal is to continue that long-term survey for many years to come. Next slide, please. So along with our monitoring protocol, VWork, our collaborative group, has established criteria to determine if a site is restored. And these are the criteria that we operate on. These are our goals for establishing a restored site. So just to list these off, the sites where the occurrence of all tamarisk and Russian olive, these are two of our primary invasives in the Verde watershed, are reduced to less than 10% of the treatment area, and where no new populations of giant reed or tree of heaven are found, and they make up less than 20% of the overall vegetation cover. And then in addition to those invasive criteria, the sites must also meet a woody passive recruitment threshold. So that is essentially, is there enough native vegetation coming back? Or do we need to go in and do our own native seeding? Do we need to get some willows in there in order to recover and to make up habitat for lost and invasive habitat? Next slide, please. All right, and so just a quick run through, in case you're not familiar with the prominent invasive species that we face on the Verde River. Tamarisk is one that is found widespread throughout the West, a deciduous tree with shrub-like growth. Some of its issues are that it forms dense monocultures, like you can see in the top photo there. Increased fire activity and intensity. They grow, really, really tight, compact together. It's a really dangerous field, especially for people that live on the Verde. And several different species are found throughout the U.S. Next slide, please. Russian olive is another one. We see a little bit less frequently than we do see tamarisk, but it's a smaller tree that forms dense monocultures as well. And it's brought in the 1800s, planted for shade and wind protection. A lot of times you'll see this on ranch land. Historically, it was used as a windbreak for a lot of agricultural fields. Next slide, please. So the treatment methods for both of these species is the same, and we do what's called a cut stump method. We find that this is both the most effective method of treatment, but then also it allows us to use the least amount of herbicide. One of our goals is always to use the least amount of chemical possible in order to get the job done right. So we cut the tree all the way down to the base as low as we can with a chainsaw, and then we'll spray it with a 10% imazapyr mixture. This imazapyr will stay in the soil for some time, and it actually does kill the root ball, and then that tree will not grow back typically. And then with the biomass, we'll chip or create habitat piles. Habitat piles are just these 4 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet cubes where we kind of lay them in a way that we've been actually trained by the Forest Service that creates great habitat for rodents, for snakes, things like that. Next slide, please. All right, giant reed. This is one of our big invaders on the Verde. It is a really tall grass, one of the tallest grasses in the world. It came from the Mediterranean region, and you'll often see them along ditches and canals and things like that. But it actually does quite well in the upland habitat as well. Next slide, please. So our treatment of giant reed is a little bit different than tamarisk and Russian olive. We have to clear the dead stalks. The stalks often die, and we'll end up forming this really, really thick fire hazard, really of dead grass that just stays erect. So we have to clear all those dead stalks, cut the live stalks down at the base, as you can see in that first photo on the left. Then within 2 minutes, we have to spray an herbicide mixture of 50% glyphosate and 10% imazapyr. Has to be done within 2 minutes. I always like to give people the analogy of the cut flower analogy, is that you teach people to cut the flowers under a running sink so that they last longer, because as soon as you cut those, it really absorbs all that liquid, and in this case herbicide. That's what we want to happen before the cells close off. And then we remove the stalks from the flood area, and where applicable, we chip to prevent regrowth. And in this project, we were able to chip Next slide, please. So for our results, so here you can see the map on the right. That was in 2022. So that was our baseline monitoring. This was before any treatment had been done. And at this time, based on our restoration criteria, neither site met our restoration standards. Not surprising, since the work had not been completed yet. Next slide, please. I'm going to divide this into two distinct sites. There was two distinct kind of groups of landowners that we were working with throughout this project. So one of them being VVPOA, that stands for Verde Village Property Owners Association, and the other one's called Busich Lane, which is a group of 5 landowners that we were able to work alongside with neighboring parcels. So at VVPOA, you can see kind of this 2022 monitoring season, that is pre-treatment. The amount of inventoried species and particularly the relative cover of a specific species throughout that site. And then following that, in the fall, the 2022-2023 treatment season, you can see 52 stems of tamarisk were cut using 30 ounces of imazapyr, and 720 stalks of giant reed were cut with just 5 ounces of glyphosate mixture. Next slide, please. And so for this Busich Lane site, this property was really heavily infested. So we spent a great majority of our time at this site. But you can see pre-treatment, we had 17 stands mapped, 6 to 10% relative cover of tamarisk. And giant reed, there was only 6 stands mapped, but they're really large stands. So they accounted for 21 to 30% of the relative cover of the property. And then in the following season, we treated nearly 2,000 stems of tamarisk and just over 17,000 stems of giant reed. And we'll have some photos of that. But you can see here on the right, actually, it's a little tough because of the way the shade was working that day. But underneath this cottonwood tree, you can see that the giant reed just engulfing the cottonwood. And then after, in the winter, it's all gone, and that cottonwood's probably pretty happy. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned earlier with our methods, one thing we like to do, we like to monitor before we go in and treat. We like to treat, and then we like to monitor again and retreat, because a lot of times what you will see is some amount of regrowth. And that's pretty typical in this line of work, that you need to maintain your initial work. So in 2023, we saw that on Busich Lane here, that those relative covers of stands had dropped significantly. The giant reed had dropped from 21 to 30% down to 6 to 10%, but there was still work to be done. So we treated additional 2,000 stems of tamarisk and nearly 6,000 stems of giant reed, as well as Russian olive. And on the right there, on those before and after photos, that's actually a large tamarisk in the back being removed. All right, next slide, please. So this is kind of the fun stuff with the monitoring that we get to do every year. This is particularly at Busich Lane, the property where we spent the most time and that was the most heavily infested. And this is something that we're very proud of, is that as the years progress, it's very clear. And just to clarify, these monitoring years were done by a completely different crew every time. So they had never seen this site before. It was completely objective, and they're trained to have very accurate estimates on relative cover. But what we saw is each year in that top row, the relative cover of native species increasing by a 10% increment every year as a result of our treatment. And maybe even better than that is our evidence of natural recruitment. In that first year, there was no evidence of native recruitment, meaning native seeds establishing in the property. After removing, we opened it up. There was a lot more light, so germination was much better. And in 2023 and 2024, we saw natural recruitment. And then lastly, in these two bottom, if you remember, these are within our criteria for a restored site. And it wasn't until that 2024 season that we were able to finally check off all the boxes. Yes, Tamarisk and Russian Olive were less than 10% of the property, as well as Tree of Heaven and Giant Reed were less than 20%. And I believe we got the Giant Reed down to 0 to 5% in the end. Next slide, please. All right, so in addition to that kind of boots on the ground work, we did landowner outreach and volunteer events. We do that through social media. We have a great social media team. We do private property visits. So I had mentioned that group, the Busich Lane group. And the way that came about was actually, it was just we had a connection with one of the landowners on this lane, and we were able to engage with them and get them interested in the project, which actually led to an in-home visit with all of the property owners on that lane as kind of a neighborhood meeting of sorts. And then that's how we were able to get landowner contracts with each and every one of them, and to be able to do that work, to be able to cross parcel lines with ease. In addition to that, we did local events. So every year we do a Martin Luther King Day of Service event, and we were able to establish a volunteer event within the project area. The first year, we had 47 registered volunteers that had to reschedule due to a pretty crazy storm that came in. After rescheduling, we had 18 participants volunteering about 54 hours of their time. And then this last year, 2024, we actually had 106 participants. We didn't have to reschedule. That accounted for about 350 hours of volunteer time. Next slide, please. So to conclude, we're very excited about this project, about having kind of stepped along these two project sites to our restored criteria as established by the Restoration Coalition. And one thing that we learned is that the importance of annual monitoring. We wouldn't have been able to see this progression and be able to quantify this if we weren't funding and being able to get these unique monitoring crews out each year to get that data for us. And then also neighborhood networks are really valuable. Sometimes it's pretty easy for us to work with federal partners with big swaths of land, big projects like that, but it's really hard for us to get in and get those restoration sites with a lot of private properties, smaller private properties. And our recommendations is that we've actually, through this project, we've engaged with other landowners that we didn't have the opportunity to work on their properties further downstream of the project area. And we have submitted a funding proposal for treatment of their property, as well as retreatment of the VVPOA and or the Busich Lane if needed, based on monitoring findings. And next slide. And that concludes my presentation on our project. If you have any questions, I don't know if that's acceptable at this time, but I'm happy to take questions, or our contact info is here on the screen. Thank you.
We'll take our time for the commissioners to address any questions that you may have. May I first ask those who are on the webinar, any commissioner wish to be heard? Have a question? Seeing none, any member of the commission present here today? Questions? I want to congratulate and commend the Friends of the Verde Valley for what I believe is the most outreach to the citizenry of the valley and of any grant that I'm aware of. And congratulate them on their efforts, not only to increase surface water, but to make known to the public what we can do and what you have done. Thank you. And I want to thank you, Mr. Kerfer, for the presentation, and your time, I hope, is well spent. I'm going to ask a question of our director. I know that the grant itself is on our website. But do you include the closeout procedures?
The presentations, I include them, what was presented today with the final meeting minutes. So after our next meeting and everything's done, I'll put everything that was shared publicly out, as far as that, but they also do have their their project final report
Right.
that is on file. I'm working to consolidate all those and eventually get those posted on the web at some point. There's a handful on there, but I've been over the years just going through older materials and have that. But again, that information is all available through public records request if anybody would like to see the project final report. This is kind of a summary of everything that they've done.
So it isn't there to contact you,
Yes,
but
short answer, yes.
When you have no other time, you're doing that.
Yeah, it's there.
That's a joke, by the way. This matter was not put on for any action, so thank you again, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a joy to be here.
The next is regarding grant 24-221. And it is set for possible action. And the director.
Yeah.
You're on the.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so this is a contract extension request that's going to be made by the National Forest Foundation. I would like to introduce Mr. Trevor Seck. He's the Arizona Program Forestry Supervisor with the National Forest Foundation. He is also going to be providing a project update on kind of where they've been and how it's leading up to the request. If that's okay with the commission. Trevor, are you with us? Thought I saw you join earlier.
Yes, I'm with you folks today.
Okay, I'll go ahead and run this presentation. Just like to introduce yourself for the record, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much, Ruben. And thank you folks for hearing us today and having us present. My name is Trevor Seck. I'm the Arizona Program Forestry Supervisor for the National Forest Foundation. And I'm here today to present on the Pine Canyon Restoration and Watershed Protection Project associated with grant number 24-221 WPF. Next slide, please. So to start out, I wanted to give a brief overview of our organization. The National Forest Foundation was chartered by U.S. Congress in 1993 with the simple mission to bring people together to restore and enhance our national forests and grasslands. And as a note, we're the only forest partner dedicated solely to protecting the national forests and grasslands. So really heavy focus on U.S. Forest Service land. Next slide, please. So our project includes an estimated 450 acres of high priority steep slope units that are extremely dense and overgrown with treatments designed to protect the primary watershed and water supply for the communities of Pine and Strawberry, Arizona, as well as protecting an upper headwaters area of the Verde watershed. These treatments really aim to reduce the risk of high severity crown fires and subsequent post-fire flooding impacts. Next slide, please. So in summary, the project is generally broken into 3 phases. Phase 1 of the project was construction of a temporary road system. This essentially acted to gain us access into the project area. That was completed in the winter of 2023-2024. Phase 2 of the project is associated with our AWPF grant. It's a multi-year hazardous fuel reduction project consisting of mechanical harvesting and biomass removal. And this phase is still currently underway. And phase 3 is largely focused on the long-term maintenance of treatments via prescribed burning, largely driven by the Tonto National Forest and their fire staff. Next slide, please. So I wanted to provide you folks with some more spatial information, if you will, and have 3 maps up here for you. In the upper left, you'll see a vicinity map with the project area in yellow. The project is located north of Pine, Arizona, and accessed via Camp La Maya. This is essentially a largely unburned canyon that leads up to the Mogollon Rim. In the center, you'll see our project area map with units broken out, as well as our temporary road system we constructed in the 2023-2024 field season. And shifting to the right side of the slide here, this is essentially a status update map. So this information was gathered from our field inspections and oversight during operations. All of the red polygons are denoting fully treated and closed out project units, with the blue and grayscale polygons showing untreated acres thus far. Also, just north or up from the crosshair feature there, you'll notice two blue linear features, and those are natural springs that we located during operations. All right, next slide. So at the end of this field season, we're happy to report 143.7 acres treated. Now this is a little shy of our initial 177 acres associated with task 4 of our grant agreement. Next slide, please. So I wanted to include a couple photo series sets of pre and post treatment to kind of provide some visual aspects of the work we're doing on the ground. Treatments are heavily designed to target the understory and ladder fuels within the project units. So as you can see here with the untreated on the left, extremely dense understory, high fire risk. On the right, we'll see the post-treatment with that area essentially opened up, if you will. Again, the real intent of these treatments is to reduce the risk of a high severity crown fire, and treatments are heavily aimed to reduce those ladder fuels. Next slide, please. And again, pre-treatment on the left, post-treatment on the right, really just highlighting how the ladder fuels are next to non-existent post-treatment here. Okay, next slide. So here's a copy of our grant agreement and associated tasks. Tasks 1 to 3 have all been completed. These are essentially the administrative steps needed to get work started on the ground. I'm here today to specifically request an extension surrounding tasks 4 and 5. Our specific request for task 4 is to extend those dates or amend to March 31st, 2025 and March 31st, 2026. What this will do is essentially act to allow us a second operational season to complete the entirety of the project. And the extension with task 5, we're requesting an extension to spring 2026, essentially after project completion, so we can report on total project accomplishments. Next slide, please. So why are we asking for an extension to our grant? Well, this project has numerous complexities, both known and unknown, I'd like to run through real quickly. To begin with, the project has a very narrow operational window. This is due to timing restrictions that do not allow any operations on the ground between March 1st and October 1st annually. This is driven from Mexican spotted owl timing restrictions, as well as private access timing restrictions, as the project area is the only access point is via the privately owned Camp La Maya, which is an active church camp essentially that's heavily active in the summer to early fall periods. In addition, we unfortunately experienced a delayed project start this year. So during project advertisement, we advertised the project to our list of qualified contractors, as well as posted this advertisement to our public-facing website with essentially an open national-facing opportunity page. With that, of the 2 top bids we received, we awarded the project to Suarez Forestry, a small local logging business. They were awarded the project largely due to the low bid, excellent references, approach to the project, as well as ample experience working on the Tonto National Forest. However, the operator was unfortunately tied to completing an adjacent project on the Tonto National Forest, and due to the small nature of their business, did not have the resources to implement both projects simultaneously. The second closest proposal was also $750,000 more expensive. So in agreement with the U.S. Forest Service, we opted to go with the quote unquote right operator despite the risk of a delayed start. Furthermore, the project site, going into the project, we understood the complexity of the site. And by complexity, I largely mean topographical challenges. This canyon is filled with a litany of steep slopes, steep drainages and ravines, as well as stream courses and other water resources. And due to this, while all of these areas are feasible for mechanical thinning treatments, it just requires additional time, especially when compared to like a flat ground, traditional ground-based logging operation. As such, production rates were slightly lower than we all initially anticipated. And the last unforeseen complexity of the project, I would say, is natural springs encountered during operations. Much to many of our surprises, we encountered 3 naturally occurring springs within the project area. Unfortunately, these springs were not located prior to implementation by Forest Service timber sale preparation staff or NFF's own field staff conducting field reconnaissance and additional layout. So to be entirely transparent with this group, these springs were typically located during operations by machines getting a little too close into these areas and noticing wet soils and subsequent minor rutting. When this occurred, we did shut down operations. And then immediately began coordination efforts with the U.S. Forest Service. This was done, 1, to maintain that transparency and trust with our partners, and 2, to determine best next steps for rehabilitating these areas. While I will say in logging, in forest and fuels reduction activities, there are always unknowns. But in this situation, these led to additional slowdowns to our work in an already short operational window. Alrighty, next slide, please. So in conclusion, the National Forest Foundation is officially requesting an extension specifically tied to tasks 4 and 5 of our grant agreement due to unforeseen delays. However, at the end of this field season, we're happy to report 143.7 acres treated in their entirety with volume removed, as well as best management practices implemented for closeout needs on skid trails, landings, and additional temporary roads constructed. Our intent is to begin return to the project site to complete the entirety of the project area starting on October 1st, 2025. We're currently coordinating with our contractor, Suarez Logging, to pin down that start date with the intent to get on the ground and complete the scope of work and maximize the impacts we can in the time allowed. And with that, that's the end of our presentation. Next slide, please. And pending time, I would like to open it up to the board for any questions you may have or additional information needs. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This matter is on the agenda for action. I'll first call on those who are attending virtually. Any commissioner who's attending virtually have any questions, comments, motions? Thank you. Anyone here present? Yes, sir. Mr. Baseline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You listed a bunch of constraints on the property as you went into it, but I think the first one, which was that access, which was limited to a certain time, wasn't that known up front?
Yes, sir. That piece itself was known. So I apologize for any confusion there. It's I guess it was truly a list of both known and unknown delays that and complexities that led to lower production rates than anticipated.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Harold.
Just for clarification, is this a request for a 1-year extension overall?
Yes.
No, okay. Then I make a motion that we approve an extension of 1 year for AWPF grant number 22-210 WPF.
I second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who, and negative, nay. Let the record show a unanimous vote. Sir, go forth and let it be done.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
very
much.
We appreciate
Your time.
as we do yours.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is grant number 24-219, Big Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to bring this to the commission's attention. I was recently notified by the project coordinators that we were trying to get our information, some deliverables submitted. And I was notified that there was a potential change in the scope of work, being that two of the projects, well, maybe step back. So this was the project where 10 tanks along the Big Sandy Natural Resource Conservation Area. There was 10 tanks total out of about 125 that Water Protection Fund was going to fund. Again, through our discussions with the project staff, I was notified that there were at least two of the ranchers or two of the project areas, they had found out that they already had the necessary tanks in place and were not going to be replacing those. And because the agreement, the contract right now had listed out specifically which 10 tanks or ranches were going to do that, I wanted to bring this to the attention of the commission. They did provide the list or the name of the two other tanks that they were going to replace on there. And I did want to show the map. Sharing this. I lost my share. Hold on. I'm not sharing it now. Apologies. Okay. So there were 10 water tanks that were going to be replaced. The two new ones that were proposed are this one here, the Peacock Kingman Lower 16 is a new one. And then down in the right hand corner here, the Francis Creek High Ranch Lonesome tank. Again, because all the tanks were listed in the agreement, if they wanted to replace those, we'd have to amend the contract to do that. So I wanted to bring it to the attention of the commission, because I know last time we had this project, the commission, wanted to discuss and identify the 10 tanks so we could do that. And that is being presented here. If the commission has any questions, I believe we have Anita Waite, who is one of the project coordinators and grantee from the Big Sandy Natural Resource Conservation District to answer any questions. And again, this would be a request for the commission to approve a change to the scope of work and amendment to the contract to include these two new tanks and delete the other ones from the scope of work.
Does Mrs. Waite want to be heard?
Yes, she's available to answer any questions as part of this.
Mrs. Waite, do you wish to be heard, or are you standing on the director's discussion? Don't hear her.
It sounds like you're muted, Ms. Waite.
You unmute her?
She's unmuted.
Looks like she is on.
Anita, can you hear us? You can maybe try something in the chat. We can see you, but we can't hear you. if you're speaking.
I can read that.
Yep.
I don't know why this is doing it.
I don't see you being anxious, so I'll assume that the director's report will suffice. Uh, Is there any questions?
Okay,
Oh, there she goes.
There you go.
now, there I am. Okay. All right. Well, through further investigation on the um, wells, we found that we have had two tanks that were already fixed, or they had tops on them. So they did not fit our criteria of open storage tanks because they had been repaired with a top. So we have moved the two tanks that you mentioned, and we got as close to riparian areas as possible. But I want to read you a little notification here, and this came the Watershed Protection Fund, or the Watershed, and it is in semi and watershed participation is significantly rare. Maintaining groundwater levels and consequently base flow is critical for creating functioning watersheds and the survival and/or expansion of aquatic and riparian ecosystems. So the way our area is, any place you would put uh, a closed storage tank would help the aquifers and the riparian areas. And of course, our first choices were a little bit closer to main water, main, excuse me, and so we are requesting that we can change those two to these two that are very definitely qualified for what we are trying to accomplish. Let me add, we've also gotten more matching. The BLM is giving us $100,000 worth of water tanks. And we have, the ranchers have all put in a match by maintaining the roads to the tank sites. So we have more matching funds, and we're still working to get more matching funds. But this is great because by starting with you, we have been able to get more interest from others to match funds with you. So do you have any other questions?
We'll start with the, any member,
Excuse me?
what? I don't, any commissioner member who is attending virtually, do you have a question? Hearing none, any commissioner present here today have any questions? Did I hear something?
No, it's just background.
That is background?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any action which should be recommended? Mr. Hill?
I make a motion that we approve the change in scope of work to AWPF grant 24219 WPF Big Sandy.
Second.
Right one. I read the right one.
Yes. That's the one I see. Motion before us is to extend,
Change of scope.
change of scope.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That was the first one. Change of scope. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yeah, negative. Hearing none. Let the record show unanimous approval of the scope, change of the scope of work. Thank you for your presentation.
Mr. Chair, can I make a correction on my last motion?
Thank you.
When I read the previous one, I think I read the wrong grant number. It should have been AWPF for the previous, not this one. I think I read,
Oh,
I
24-.
think I put 22-210. It should have been 24-221.
It's actually 24-219.
219. Should be 219.
This is 24-219 that we just voted on.
Yeah, I'm talking about the last one.
The
I
last
think I
one
read
is
the wrong-
24-21.
I was reading the wrong line, so I just
Okay,
put that on record. I read the wrong grant number.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I
Sorry
might have
about that.
jumped on the
We'll
agenda.
accept that as a, technical change.
Yeah,
Yeah, I went out of order there.
not that it's probably a
It'll
big
get
deal.
fixed in the paper minute.
We'll get the paperwork right, right?
I apologize.
No problem at all. Okay, the next is, let's see. We got regarding grant number 24-220. Commissioners notified that we're under discussion, and it is for possible action. Mr. Director.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So over the last year, I was working with the Arizona Trout Unlimited Group. This grant was funded for a project on Christopher Creek to do some restoration, Boy Scout Ranch, RC Bar Ranch, our Barcy Ranch. We finally, it's close to probably October, November, when we actually got the grant agreement, or a little bit before that, before we got the grant agreement signed. As they were going through their process to start getting paperwork and permitting and stuff done, I guess they were notified from the Boy Scouts perspective that there was potential that they were going to be selling the property, just based with everything else that's been happening with the Boy Scout. So because of that happened, they weren't comfortable or in a position to really move forward with the grant award contract and do the work if they weren't going to have access, the property might be sold. As part of your meeting materials, I did provide the full scope of the letter for your reference. Again, so that was just more the informational part of it. The grant award amount for that one was $174,924. So unless there's any other questions or commission or questions or concerns from the commission, we would just, if you want to go ahead and close that out, from the commission standpoint, we'll go ahead and close that grant out and be done with it. But again, I just wanted to provide the context here if there's any questions that I can answer on top of what's been provided by the grantee and myself.
Mr. Biesmeyer.
Yeah, sorry, what was the dollar value?
$174,924.
Any questions from those who are commissioners attending virtually? Hearing none. Any questions, right?
Mr. Chairman, Ruben, will this money go back into our funding for this cycle?
So the way that the budget works, money is always in the grant account that we have. Anytime money leaves us when there's an actual expenditure. So even if we have a contract, we encumber the funds, we don't take away from the amount. So, but to answer your question, yes, that money will be back and stay inside of the larger grant fund dollars. We'll go over the budget, but you'll see that we'll point out that number when we get there, but that the funding stays in there. Again, if it's encumbered, we kind of keep track of that on the side. But yes, it'll go back for future commission use.
Right. So technically, the unencumbered amount will be reduced, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. That's correct.
Therefore, we'll have the money. Is that fine?
Yes, that's a good way of explaining. Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion? Yes.
To move that the 24-220 Christopher Creek Restoration Project be closed out.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Anita first, Trent second.
Thank you. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. Let the record show it was unanimously voted by all members present. The next item is the executive director's updates. I won't list them all. I'll let you go through it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, yeah, I've got several here. Just for apologies that I switched back between different documents here.
You have the floor.
Okay, so the first one I wanted to provide was a legislative update. I did provide one, actually, one of the documents to you. Well, first of all, I'll start off with the governor's budget had been, executive budget had come out early in January. As far as we can tell within the governor's budget, there was the $750,000 appropriation or line item within the Department of Water Resources budget for the program. So right now, that's what we know. Again, we won't know final numbers until the budget is approved, you know, closer towards June timeframe, hopefully sooner. But right now, at least in the governor's executive budget, we are getting our $750,000 that we got last year. That has been a continuation of our ongoing appropriation.
Does the statute indicate that 250,000 is for support by the Arizona Department of Water Resources?
No, this is just a straight 750,000 line item to the department. If we need to go into administration funds, that would be a request that I would put forth to the commission to transfer some of the unobligated fund balance into our administrative account for administrative purposes, but that would come out of all the overall grant fund amount. But as far as an appropriation for the next fiscal year 2020, 2026.
Not restricted by statute. That's what I'm just trying to see if we have some obligation by statute. Or I know we have it by policy and that we do it. I just wanted to know if the statute had made it specific.
No, there's nothing else. Usually within the larger statewide budget, there are supplemental budget line things that come through that give the commission the authority to grant funding to the Department of Water Resources for administrative purposes. So those two pieces pull together to answer your question. That one, again, that doesn't come out until usually after the budget is passed as part of the bigger feed bill for the state. But typically that's been an ongoing common thing that they've allowed or given the commission the authority to transfer money to the department for administration funds up to, I think it's $360,000, $320,000.
If you don't mind, I'm going to ask for questions. When it comes to budget, usually commissioners have some interest. Any commissioner who is attending virtually have a question regarding this piece of legislation? Hearing that, anyone who is here? Ruben, you may go on to the next item.
Okay, so this is continuing on the legislative update. There was Senate Bill 1649. This is one of the bills that I did provide to you in your meeting materials. This is regarding legislative appointments and qualifications introduced by Senator Peterson. So there was a line or a motion, or a suggestion in there on page 10 that directly affected the Water Protection Fund Commission. This is the latest version that I pulled from the legislature's website. So essentially what the bill is proposing is to strike the requirements that those who have demonstrated an interest in natural resources, and also the appointing or striking people who represent natural resource conservation districts, and also just doing some clarification about who the appointing authority instead of shall be are. Again, this language would directly affect the Water Protection Fund Commission. Right now, I'm not aware of any movement that's been taken. I think it's gone through the rules hearing. The last action was a Senate Standing Committee on February 24th, 2025. The Senate rules okay. But I haven't heard of any other hearings on this particular bill, but it is in the list of bills that came in through this session. Again, I will be tracking this, and any other updates regarding this will be in June if this bill moves forward in any committees or anything like that. But I just wanted the commission to be aware that this is some legislation that was proposed on this legislative cycle.
That's with the last piece of legislation. Any member of the commission attending virtually have any questions?
I do. Just
You-
shall it?
How are you?
Okay.
Hearing none? Cheryl, you're it.
Oh. Um, so on number 2 of that, it says one person who represents the State Association of Natural Resource Conservation District and who is appointed by the governor. There's several of us that are in NRCD. Does that make a difference for the other members who are on conservation district boards?
It looks like it changes the appointing,
Just who appoints them?
right? So these,
Okay.
the 4 Natural Resource Conservation District appointees, 2 of them are appointed by the President of the Senate and 2 are appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Person that represents the state association is appointed by the governor. So that's a different appointing authority. And this one right here is just changing who the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House.
Okay.
Changing those
All right.
out of all 5 Natural Resource Conservation District members.
Just the one is.
Just the one appointed by the governor, that language wasn't changed.
Commissioner Peterson.
Did Senator Peterson, is there any indicate any comments or why he was proposing these changes?
I am not aware.
Might have just been like a striker type thing. Sometimes they just introduce stuff, so they have something in there that
They could, yeah, they're
they
starting.
can, there's just no rhyme or reason to why they do it. It's like an avenue for they have something they can change. Yeah. I guess, because it doesn't seem to be any other reason why they even change that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just who happen to be looking at it and want to delete some of the wording.
I do know that there are some newer members of the legislature are looking at all the commission.
Yes, this bill included about 15
So I
different
think
boards.
it's not just this, not just ours, but
No,
there's the whole fact of how many commissions should the state have and who should appoint them. But I have not heard of any of that going forward.
This is, so again, just for commission's information at this point. If anything changes, again, I will bring the commission up to date on if this is moving forward.
Next item?
It's another piece of legislation that I recently found during our summaries. This was introduced by Senator Dunn. It's just a technical correction, nothing changing the definitions in this chapter regarding the Water Protection Fund. The context otherwise specifies what required, given the definitions of the commission, means Arizona Water Protection Fund Commission, and fund means Arizona Water Protection Fund. Again, just a technical correction, nothing that really changes anything that the commission would do. We can see that.
Can you read that one more time, please?
Okay, so 452102, statute 452102 definitions in this chapter, unless the context otherwise and strikes specifies and changes that to requires. The commission means the Arizona Water Protection Fund Commission, and number 2, fund means the Arizona Water Protection Fund. Again, it was just a technical change in there. So those are the, at least that I found so far, or any potential statutes that would affect Water Fund Commission.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Next item, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the budget update, hopefully we can see that okay. I'll go through this pretty quick. It's this activity is for fiscal year 2025 from July 1, 2024 through February 18th of 2025. So again, a couple of weeks ago, I had our budget folks give us the latest and greatest. The beginning balance at the beginning of the fiscal year was $2,963,885, or excuse me, the grant fund. Total funds in the program were $3,215,671. There was about $75,000 in interest. We have gotten about half of the $750,000 appropriation. Again, the full $750,000 comes in quarters over the course of the year. So the general fund appropriation, again, it's only saying 562,000 at this point, but again, we're getting quarters, so we'll be getting some more in there. Total revenues for the program, including interest, are 638,373. We've had about 136,000 in salary expenses. Grantee payments have gone out about 441,000 for a total expenditures of 577,159. So the fund balance, and excuse the typo there, says September 2024. That should say March or February 18th. My apologies for that. I just saw that now. 3,276,886 is our current fund balance as a couple of weeks ago. The existing grant obligations, again, these are grant award contracts that have been signed. They're actively ongoing. 2,629,609. And again, this unobligated balance right here does include that 174,000, or does not include the 174,000 that was previously obligated, since they requested to move that out. So again, that's current as we know that from the commission's actions previously. And the uncommitted balance right now is 647,276. So that is again what is unobligated on the state in our state accounting right now. Any questions about the balance overall? Can I answer those?
And remember, the commission wishes to be heard on the finance review.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is Commissioner Thompson.
Yes,
Do I have
ma'am.
Okay. Ruben, on the interest, I was just curious about your, what kind of account would have accrued that much interest, and are you limited as to what kind of accounts you can put the funds in to accrue interest?
Commissioner Thompson, yes. So any interest that is identified there comes from the larger uncommitted fund balance or grant, or excuse me, our uncommitted grant balance. Since that money's sitting in the state account, any interest that is accrued over the months or the quarters are within, the interest accrues on the grant account. As part of the statutes, the DWR is allowed to move some of that interest into the administration funds. I can't remember the specific amount per transfer, but again, that money can get transferred over to support some of the administration funds for the program. And again, if that money is never there, or never enough, I can go and request the commission to transfer additional administration dollars for the year for the program for the next fiscal year. But I guess to answer your question, that funding comes directly from interest accrued on on the unobligated grants or unobligated fund balance for the program.
Right. Well, I guess my question is, are you regulated as far as, investing in anything other than a money market account to accrue interest like that?
Commissioner, I'm not aware of that the department does any other investing.
Ruben?
Yes.
Is this money then interest that the state treasurer?
I believe it would just be within the state.
I understand that money is available to the state treasurer for this kind of financing. And all the interest is on all the state funds and then shared equally. That's my understanding.
From the
Yeah,
state.
we don't, as a commission, have an account that draws interest.
Correct. This is nothing.
Yeah, all the interest drawing accounts are in the state treasurer's office and under their control. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, that.
Yeah.
That's different.
Does
It's
that
it's in
help?
a general fund account. It's in the interest, yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so you don't have any control of where you're storing the money and
We can't take
acquiring
any
interest.
bills right now.
No.
And we probably don't know unless, we do research for the state treasurers. They, and then they determine where, when, and when it's dispersed. Although I think we do have a request, we can make a request if necessary.
Thank
Could
you.
I ask-
Yes,
I
I have another, does that answer your question? I have another question here when you're done.
Yes, that answered my question. Thank you.
Yes,
I'm just curious, what would be the percentage rate that the state receives for their, or anyone in the state?
I don't have that
We have-
information, but we can ask for it and get it. Will you contact the treasurer and they'll probably will
Just curious.
have a report as to the yields
Mhm.
over time, at least.
Okay, I can present that at the next commission.
Yeah, at the next meeting, please. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're most
Just
welcome.
curious.
That's why we're here. We're here to make sure the commission's not only doing well, but knows what the public knows what we're doing.
Okay,
Next item.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did have some commission membership updates that I just wanted to provide. Again, welcome to Commissioner Rolando Flores. Recent appointment was, I think, about a week and a half ago. We worked a lot last week to get Commissioner Flores onboarded, and get everything rolling, make sure he's set up in our system here, and for him to be able to participate today. But again, thank you for coming, and look forward to working with you.
Likewise, thank you.
And the next membership update. So if you weren't aware, our ex officio non-voting advisory members from the legislature were not part of the legislature this year. That was Senator Kerr and Representative Cook. So with the new cycle, they weren't on the legislature this year. So I did reach out via letter to the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, notifying them that they have the authority to appoint advisory members to the commission. Those letters went out about a month ago. Is that about a month ago? Yeah. So again, we're just waiting to see if they appoint any advisory members from the legislature for the program, and if and when those come up, I'll notify the commission who those members are be. So when I did the roll call today, that's why those in our letterhead right now, those are blank. Okay, that was it, unless there's any questions. Yes.
As a comment.
Okay, yes.
I mean, so just interestingly, I applied for reappointment over a year ago and contacted the governor's office, boards and commissions, and was basically told that because our commission, you can serve beyond your appointment date, that it's a low priority and just to go about our business. So it's been over a year and a half.
Yeah.
Well,
And he basically said, yeah, it's not a priority. So just keep serving. So it is, it's in the works.
Yes.
And I don't know if you're in the same boat, because I think we're both appointed by the governor.
We are, yeah.
That's what I was told, why it's not going anywhere. Is they're just
Okay.
prioritizing other appointments. And because our board allows you to serve after your appointment expiration date, that just keep going.
Until you're
Yeah.
another person is appointed and assumes office.
Until they get around to reappointing you.
Okay.
I thought that was an interesting conversation.
Yes. And that's been our history. We've had members on for 2 or 3 years beyond their appointment based on
It's crazy.
that statute.
Well-
Part of, I guess, what my other comment about the legislature looking at all the boards and commissions and the appointings and appointment authorities and such, that's one of the issues is why should people discontinue them?
Yeah.
But that's the way they wrote the statute. The law is the law.
so we're blind under the radar.
As long as we spend the money, they don't seem to worry.
least we're still legitimate commission members.
That's it. And I'll keep calling on. I have the status of the update of the active grants. Do
Yes,
you
there's-
have that?
I'm gonna just touch on that briefly, Mr. Chair.
Can we do that now?
Yes, that was my next item. We're moving on. The commission members, I did provide you a list of all the active grants, kind of what we're at, as far as I know, how much has been paid on each one. I wasn't planning specifically to go on through each of them. I mean, I can if the commission would like, but unless there's any questions that anything concerns that you had seen and implementation or where things are at, if there's any concerns or questions, I can answer those, but just wanted to provide the commission with that update.
Just wanted to make sure the commission was alert that there is such a list, and if they don't have one, we'll get you.
Okay.
Thank you. So we're in the next item? I think you're still up for the grant cycle plan?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so this is the next agenda item, grant cycle planning. So with this, Commissioner, I just wanted to, this is typically the time of year when the commission gets together, we talk about potential funding that may be coming into the program. And if the commission would like to start planning for a grant cycle, you usually give me the go-ahead to start updating the application manual, to start looking at any minor changes there might be to clarifications within that, to get the online portal set up in the background and getting dates and everything. So we're at that point this year to begin planning for a grant cycle. And as part of that, I just wanted to, bear with me, I just wanted to provide a quick, I guess, kind of long range snapshot of our potential budget for this. Our chief financial officer moved on to another position like a week ago, so I was fortunate to talk to him before he left. So I was going to present an Excel table. We went through kind of the FY25, FY26, projected budget of what the commission might have. So to give you some insight, depending on what the grant or unencumbered balance might be, if the commission would like to start potentially thinking of moving forward with the grant cycle. So if you bear with me, let me stop sharing what I'm sharing here. Share an Excel sheet. Okay, so this is again a very, very high level, quick kind of budget information we put together. So, taking our fund balance at the beginning of the year, our appropriation for the year that came in, anticipated interest we'd be getting for this fiscal year 25, our fiscal year 26 appropriation, again, which is assumed at this point, fiscal year 2026 anticipated interest would put us to a balance of about $4.9 million. Taking into account grant expenditures to date, the grant obligations remaining, again, everything the commission has signed or has agreements, and the obligations, actually, this does include the 3 new contracts that that the commission did award last year as well. That's about $560,000 that the commission awards. So this, I'm sorry, no, it doesn't. The line item below accounts for those because they haven't been encumbered yet. Our fiscal year 25 expected administration and support costs, expected 2026 support costs. In the governor's budget right now, there is a 2% raise that's across all state agencies, all state employees. We just wanted to include that in there if that did go through as a projection on balance. Again, travel, this is just kind of staff things that we do travel, operating costs throughout the year. Again, if commissioners do have the ability to request compensation for meetings, we just put some money in the budget for that. So the projected right now at this point for a fiscal year 2026 is about 800,713. Again, kind of a baseline figure based on what we knew a couple of weeks ago on where the budget is and what appropriations we may or may not be getting. That's general projection we might have available for grants and a grant cycle next year. So based on that, I just wanted the commission to have that information. First off, 813,700. And if the commission, and I did want to also, again, did provide a copy if the commission did want to start planning for a grant cycle, just some potential dates that we have in there. I started sharing that initially for consideration if the commission wanted to plan for a grant cycle and, keeping to the same time frame and schedule as we did last year. I pretty much took the same within a day or two of what we did last year. If the commission likes that schedule, here's some proposed dates that we could start planning on. Having the application manual available in June. Again, everything would be formally approved by the commission in June as far as approving a grant cycle, approving the grant application manual, or anything that we're going to be doing. Have a workshop in June, application consultations from June through August. Having the portal, online application portal open in July of 25. Deadline to submit applications in August 29th. Again, a 45-day public comment period for the applications from September 19th through November 3rd. Staff review comments to the applicants and commission around November 10th. And then, long range, we can formalize these dates more, but application presentation to the commission on November 18th, clarifying questions 19th through the 24th. And again, the commission meeting in late November for application grant selections around the end of November. And again, these dates are all arbitrary at this time. We can formalize the schedule, but if the commission wanted to generally keep to what we did last year, this is close to within a day or two what we did previously. So at this point, unless I'll take any questions, but if the commission wanted to move forward with planning for a grant cycle, I'll take any direction the commission provides.
Any member of the commission wish to be heard and have questions? You're on.
I have a couple of questions. First one is, do we anticipate there's really going to be any changes to the grant application manual other than the schedule?
I don't, unless the commission saw something last year that they didn't like or wanted more of or less of, we can do that. And I guess just to touch on that, as we come into the end of next year, we're going to be kicking into another triennial grant application guidelines review cycle. So that'll probably be like in the November meeting where we'll get all those, we take public input on the application guidelines, the manual. So any major updates would come probably following that. But to answer your first question, no, I don't anticipate any major changes.
Okay, because assuming that the commission wants to move forward with the grant cycle, the timing that's really tight, and having a November 25th date for a commission selection, that's the week of Thanksgiving, which I think is going to be really difficult. At the very least, I was wondering if it'd be, several different ideas. I'm almost wondering if we could start the grant cycle in May. And the reason I'm saying that is if we don't anticipate any changes to the grant application manual other than this schedule, maybe we could approve moving forward with starting it earlier, which I think would help with November, December. I don't know if we see any issues with that. And then if we don't think that's really reasonable, if it would be reasonable to possibly just cut the final date and time for the to submit applications to August 22nd, just make it a week earlier, and then move all the all of the dates that are following that back so that we're not running into Thanksgiving. But I almost feel like if the commission feel like we're going to move forward with the grant cycle and we're not making changes to the application manual, then maybe we just move forward and say, tweak the schedule and make it happen instead of waiting till June to put it up. So waiting until June for the commission to approve it.
I think a lot of that discussion just was waiting on the budget, if we were actually gonna have an appropriation and known what our budget was gonna be before we kicked it off. I think that was generally from my understanding prior, why it wasn't kicked off earlier, but.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Steve.
Yes. I'm gonna open the floor to the commission.
Yeah,
Steve, you're on.
I concur, and I've had that from other people calling me, asking me questions about the grant cycles, et cetera, et cetera. So I wholly support, even if it's up a week to 2 weeks, I think that would benefit us all in getting things done. So I support Rodney's comments completely.
As far as moving things up, that probably would be good. For me personally, anything between the 10th and the 17th in November is not good for me. So if you were gonna have the presentations somewhere in there, that would make it real difficult. Probably.
So this is my Word document, so I can make notes here.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Let's see what other questions we have. We're gonna get back to you. Any other questions or comments? You're on again.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because I feel like even this last grant cycle, we weren't really sure. We kind of took a gamble and said, well, we don't know if we're gonna have 500,000. We don't know if we're gonna have $1 million.
Yeah.
But let's move forward. And then if we have to, at the end, if we don't have the money, we can always shut it down. So, I mean, with the idea that we might have 800,000 right now, if we want to, I just kind of feel like this schedule is really, and I understand completely why we want to usually have the budget and all that, or the actual number in hand, but just trying to get us out of the holiday range if we can.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, yeah. No, I agree, because we may or may not know the budget by May. I mean, probably not, and it could even stretch on longer.
That's right.
You never quite know. So I would concur. We should put it forward, and we may have that issue that we don't have any funding, but at least we got the process going, and when we do get funding, we can make it, and we can have a reasonable examination of the projects. To do our.
I have another question too, whenever.
Oh, I don't have anything. I concur with Rodney. It's like, because the way that we grade the program projects is like, kind of see how much money we're having to work with and then start ranking them out until we run out of money. So the May faux pas that we're going on doesn't really matter for the deadline.
Yeah.
The ending date is what I'm trying to say. So go ahead, Shelley. Sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
For two questions, actually. One is for Ruben, because I know it's gonna, if you move it to May, it's gonna put him in crunch time. Am I correct?
There's not a lot of changes to the application manual. I mean, that'll be just kind of administrative going through, but I just have to go and set up all the portal. And it all kind of depends what day the commission, I think Commissioner Howell said, mid-August, we can move that to whatever date, but yeah, if we can do that sooner, I'd start on that sooner than later.
So maybe, the only ones that would be pressured for time is the applicants then, if you move things, if you shorten the period.
Yes.
Right, is that what you're thinking?
Go ahead.
Well, my thinking, there was two different thought processes here. One was if we can't move the grant cycle to start back in May, which would give them more time, we could keep the normal time schedule in place. We don't want to start in May. If we move the August 29th to August 22nd, that would shorten it by 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's still a 2-month period for developing it. So, but I was just more thinking if it was possible for us to start the grant cycle in May. So that, and then we could do our normal time frame, and so we wouldn't be backing up against the holidays for all of our voting and our applicant presentations.
Well, and like Steve said, you can move it up. The November date for the applicant's presentation, if you moved it up 2 weeks, that would probably really help everyone as far as the holidays are concerned. Am I correct? That's what you're thinking?
Hard to tell. Right?
Mr. Chairman, so we got to think about it like this. This is a pretty unique time to take advantage of this since there's not going to be any changes to the manual. The people that are interested in applying for water protection funds, they have it on their radar. They have their idea, they have their budget. All they're waiting for is it to be available for the applications to be submitted. So I really don't think the application crunch that we're worried about is going to be near as severe as it could be. I think the people that are interested in applying for the program, they're just waiting for the game to be open. So I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue to move it up even a whole month. The only thing that time critical starts on the final date to submit, because then we start running into the comment period, review period and whatnot. That's more structurally tighter to move. Those dates can't be, but moving it up like a whole month, I'm not seeing any issue with it. And then that,
The time period for the public comment is statutory.
pretty much fixed. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The amount of time.
Yeah, those latter days after the final date, those can't really be adjusted because of review period, 45-day comment, all of that. Those kind of move however we move the initial date, like Mr. Hale's saying. So if we move it up a month, those will move back a month, but I'm not seeing any issue with the applicants having any problem with meeting that deadline, especially since we're not, as of now, making any adjustments to the application and the manual.
I have a question. If we do May and we go to a Tuesday in November, which is the 19th, I believe, is that correct?
18. Well, and
How about Wednesday? We go back, I meant to change, we changed Tuesday to Wednesday. That's the 19th. Does that get it beyond your
So November,
into 17 in November?
Oh, yeah.
November 2025, the Tuesdays are the 4th, 11th, 18th, and the 25th.
Yeah.
Those
and
are-
that-
Yeah, November 19th is a Wednesday.
Yeah, well, I'm giving you
Yeah,
as
thank
much day, time from, as you possibly can. If you say the 18th, that's a Tuesday, we can change it to
We
Tuesday.
can meet on Wednesday.
I'm asking
Well,
what works.
I can drive all night and be here on the 18th if you want to know.
You can call in.
But it would be nice if
I can't tell you to drive all night. I really can't, for a number of reasons.
so you're thinking the voting meeting would be on the 19th?
The 19th?
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, on Wednesday, the 19th. By the way, this is not on the agenda for action. So what I will do as the chairman will give the executive director administrative direction in what I think is the consensus of the commission. And ask him to provide you with an updated document. And if there's any,
I think we can. So we may provide direction on planning a grant cycle.
Yeah,
So I
okay,
think
well,
we're good to make an
direction,
action
yeah.
today.
okay, so then we can do action. Okay, I
think
wasn't
so.
sure.
That's my personal opinion.
I'll take it. I don't think anybody here gonna complain, right? So, yes,
So, Mr. I guess just for moving forward purposes and actually getting everything approved, was this something maybe the executive committee can
yeah, if necessary, we can do
schedule,
that too.
or another commission meeting, if the commission meeting wants to meet
But I'm
again?
gonna ask Commissioner Held to give the May thought in the 19th formal motion so I can
Okay.
Before we
put
do
it on
that,
the record. Yeah.
before we do, does that sound reasonable for, like, with your work process? Is that something that will fit into your schedule first? Before
Yes,
we-
yes, we can do this
We
whenever.
can
you-
handle that one.
Okay, that's the biggest
He's a
first, is to make sure that that will
Thank you.
work for you. And then personally, my personal opinion is I don't need to approve a grant cycle schedule. We know what if we just want to say, make it start in May and you could come up with the schedule, fix the grant application manual. I mean, personally, I would be fine with that. I don't know.
Yeah,
how
but I
other
think
commissioners- But I think if we fit with
we
the,
need to solve her problem too.
It sounds,
right, but it
sounds like
sounds
it
like
2 weeks would be fine, right? You just
Sure.
moved it all 2 weeks forward, that would cover it.
Yeah,
Okay, and that'd be like
that's what I'm
the,
saying, and Wednesday is not our normal day, so that's all. If we put it in the minutes now, people will know it, that's what I.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I misunderstood what you were saying. I apologize.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Mr. Hill, you're recognized.
Or you wanted me to make a motion?
I want you to motion, I'd like to hear a motion that says we're gonna start in May and
All right,
end on November 19th.
try to spit this
Not,
up
not,
without.
not,
No, it's all good. So I make a motion for to give authorization to the executive director to start the grant application process in May with the plan to develop the schedule so that the final commission vote will occur on November 19th. Was that our date?
19th.
Do we need more clarification than that? I think that's the general gist of it.
That's- He can
I
fill in,
second that.
Yeah.
he can fill in the rest of the dates.
Yeah.
And please will you please send out a copy of the updated one for us?
yes.
Is there any discussion regarding the motion that's before us? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Let the record show that it was unanimous vote of the commission. Thank you for the discussion.
Thanks, Ruben, for your flexibility.
The next grant was put on at this late date in the agenda at the request of the presenter. Is that not correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
I wanted the commission to be aware that the presenter was needed to be heard now. All right?
Thank you for clarifying. It was
Yeah, and it
on
wasn't,
agenda.
and it wasn't with the others. So I figured you guys needed to know. So with that, this is projection closeout presentation for 22-215. Mr. Ruben, you're on again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the Ravenna and Pampas Grass Control along the Colorado River from Glen Canyon Dam to Diamond Creek. The grantee was Rivers Edge West, and we're closing out this project here. We've got the final report that I'm reviewing, and we've worked on the final billing. I'm wondering, is a Melissa McMaster or someone from Rivers Edge West online?
I'm here, Ruben. Yep, it's Melissa.
So thank you, Melissa. So if you go ahead and introduce yourself, and I'll pull up your presentation and I'll run it for you.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Hi, good. Is it still morning or are we in the afternoon? Still morning, still before noon. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present on project that you so graciously awarded us money for. I am a plant biologist. I have a consulting company, and we partnered with Rivers Edge West, which is a nonprofit that I worked for many years. And they do a lot of really amazing work, river restoration projects. And so this was a great opportunity for all of us to work together with Grand Canyon National Park, the Hualapai Tribe, and Glen Canyon National Recreation Area. So I'll just give you a little bit of a wrap up of what we did and why we did it, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have. Okay, next slide. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background on Ravenna grass, some details on it. It's a large perennial bunch grass. Hopefully you can see some photos of it there off on the right-hand side of the slide. It has large plumes that are filled with thousands and thousands of tiny little seeds that are dispersed by wind and water. It has really rough edge margins along the leaves, and kind of these they're kind of nasty when you're working with it, these like fiberglass type hairs all throughout the entire plant. Its native range is in Southern Europe and Western Asia. It's an ornamental, but it has escaped cultivation here, especially in our desert Southwest. It appears that the presentation disappeared.
You see what happened? That was weird. Let's share that
Okay, wait, now I can see it. Hopefully you all can too. It is really similar in form and function to pampas grass. If y'all are familiar with that at all, that's an invasive grass that has really had some significant impacts on the coast of California. So it really loves to grow in these riparian areas. It creates these like really crazy dense monocultures. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So go ahead to the next slide, please. So why do we love to hate this plant? Why is it so ravenous? It really prefers disturbed riparian areas, ditches, marshes along rivers, creeks. It can also grow underneath the canopy of all of our favorite riparian tree species as well, or shrubs like willows. It's highly competitive, establishes dense, large monocultures really quickly. It displaces native species. In Arizona, Coconino County, along the Colorado River and Grand Canyon National Park and Glen Canyon National Recreation Area are the two main areas that you see it growing. It is also along it's also in Mojave County, Maricopa, and in Yuma counties. And there are other efforts underway to control the species along various river systems. Next slide. So how do you get rid of it? Couple different methods that are possible. Early detection for this particular project, key. So the way that we worked on controlling it in Grand Canyon was by rafting 226 miles along the Colorado River once a year in this like 2 to 4 week window when the grasses would have shot up their seed heads, but those seed heads wouldn't have shattered and be spreading the seeds quite yet. So the ways to actually control it, you can do manual control or chemical control. In Grand Canyon for this project, we just did manual control. So when we would find a plant, we would clip and bag all the seed heads, as you can see in the photo on the left there. And then we would dig up the plant and we would place it someplace high and dry, up on a rock, in another shrub or tree or something like that. And then it would just dry out and die. Chemical control is definitely possible. I know in places like Glen Canyon, that's predominantly what they've done. But that's best for areas where you have huge populations and big monocultures. Unfortunately for us, we basically just had nice isolated little patches, and so we didn't have to resort to using chemicals at all. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to give you a sense of kind of where we're talking about, so in the upper right-hand corner there is Lee's Ferry, and that's where we would put in on our river trip. And then we would travel downriver 226 miles to the far left down to Diamond Creek Canyon and where the takeout is. You can see in the middle of this map is the South Rim Visitor Center. That's about halfway through the whole canyon. So we were focused mostly on Grand Canyon National Park. We did do one small trip up from Lee's Ferry upriver to the dam as well in Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, and removed some plants up there. But those guys, that Glen Canyon has a really good handle on that population right now. They're doing a great job on that. So we just did one quick trip to help them out and then focused our efforts for the last 4 years in Grand Canyon National Park. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the history of Ravenna in the park. So it was first planted at Lee's Ferry in Glen Canyon National Recreation Area in 1981. It was planted as an ornamental grass. I mean, it is really beautiful. It was officially documented and collected in the park in 1989. And then very shortly thereafter, in 93, the Park Service started removing and treating Ravenna grass. Larry Stevens is a pretty prominent scientist in Arizona. He spent a lot of time in Grand Canyon, and he started to realize that this plant was spreading throughout the corridor and decided to really take that on as a big project and really try to get control of Ravenna grass so we didn't have yet another invasive plant species spreading throughout the canyon. The biggest concern was that would start to go into the side canyons, sort of like what tamarisk did. You know, tamarisk trees started in the side canyons or in the main stem along the river and then moved into the side canyons. And AWPF has supported a lot of those projects removing tamarisk from side canyons. So we were trying to prevent that. Next slide, please. So this has all been a huge collaborative effort since 1993. The vegetation program within the park was kind of leading the charge, but had lots of different partners that came in. In those first years, over 35,000 plants removed. The program the vegetation program had collaborations with different river trips, with commercial river guides. There was a guides training seminar. There were some commercial boatmen who just took it upon themselves and really did a lot of work with this. So pretty solid effort until about 2015. And from 2010 to 2014, Grand Canyon had a great partnership with Glen Canyon National Recreation Area and the Lake Mead Exotic Plant Management Team, where we worked both upriver and downriver. Okay, next slide. And so current efforts is what I am talking about now, what I'm presenting on. So we have a collaboration with Grand Canyon National Park, Rivers Edge West, the Wallapai Tribe, Mariposa, and we received funding from Arizona Water Protection Fund and also from Grand Canyon River Outfitters Association in order to make this happen for the last 4 years. Next slide, please. So how did we do this? I've kind of alluded to it a little. We did one trip a year for 5 years, actually, 2020 through 2024. And each trip was 15 to 17 days. We had between 2 and 4 boats, depending on the trip. And we went from Lee's Ferry to Diamond Creek. Next slide. And we did everything on the river. We carried all of our food, all of our camping supplies. And in the last 2 years, we actually started a collaboration with some USGS scientists from the Grand Canyon Research and Monitoring Center, where they would do their work in camp. They were doing fish work and water quality and a bunch of other different things. And we would do our Ravenna grass work as we were moving downstream every day. So that was a really nice collaboration that we have started to develop. Next slide, please. And so as we were traveling downriver, we were getting the data and we were finding the plants, digging them up and removing them. So we use the historic data from Grand Canyon National Park and then the knowledge from all of us who have been down there for the last 20 years and have continued to work on these projects. We used Gaia and field maps to collect our data and to locate our sites. All the data was collected electronically. And so we have on our devices the locations of the Ravenna sites really from the last 20 years. And so we would pull over at the sites, we'd get out, we'd walk the sites and get to work. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we would stop, we'd search, we would clip any seed heads that we found, and we would dig the plants up. So these are just a couple of images of some of the places that we would work. Next slide, please. Okay, so results. It's always fun when you have a reason to graph all of your data after 5 years and take a look at it. So this was actually really fun to do. So typically with a project like this, you would expect to see, so you can see at the on the left-hand side, you have the years. The first column are the number of plants, and so you would expect to see the number of plants decrease every year. However, that has not been the case for this project, and I'll talk about the reasons why in the next couple of slides. But you can see, our first year we had 337, and then in the middle there we got 421 plants. So our numbers were kind of all over the place. The one thing that I think is really encouraging and great to see with this data is that last column there with the new populations. And you can see that last year in 24, we only found one new population of Ravenna grass compared to 12 when we started doing this 5 years ago. So overall, our efforts are working and we're seeing the spread of Ravenna decrease significantly throughout the canyon. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll just kind of look year by year and just talk about some of the interesting things that happened. So 2020, this was the first year with the trip that was dedicated solely to Ravenna grass removal since 2014. The previous 6 years, there had been intermittent work, but no trips had been dedicated to actually just looking for Ravenna. So we found a few new and we found historic sites with lots of different plants there. As you can see, 337 plants altogether. And over, let's see, we had 34 sites that we actually found plants at. Next slide. So moving down in the years, so that next year, you can see the number of plants decreased dramatically down to only 95. But the number of seed heads increased up to 265. So for this year, we actually found one large new population. There's an old side channel that some USGS folks have research projects going on in, and they had found this Ravenna plant back there. And just that one population had 171 seed heads. So that really increased our number of seed heads that particular year. Next slide, please. In 2022, you can see we had a big increase in the number of plants again. It bumped up to 421. And so what happened this year is that we had a group of folks who were really gung-ho, and we stopped and we got off the boats at all of our sites and we walked around and we really looked to see how many plants we could find, and we found tons. So we also found another historic site that was in another channel and got another 116 seed heads at that side. Or no, 224. And so we found several old historic sites on this trip because we were actually using the data from Grand Canyon and looking at those old sites and getting out and walking areas. So again, our numbers increased that year, but you can see the number of new populations is still decreasing, which is great. Next slide, please. And okay, moving into 23. So this year got super interesting. We didn't find very many plants at all. There are a couple of unique things that happened. So there's a high flow event that happens occasionally in Grand Canyon where they release 40,000 cubic feet per second for a few days in order to help build beaches. And so they had one of those events that spring. And then we also had a constant high flow of around 20,000 cubic feet per second for about 3 months. So just to put that in relationship, on our October trips for the last couple of years, our flows have been around 5,000 CFS up to a total of 9,000 CFS. So significantly lower than that 40 to 20. So the water was able to get up onto these benches. And what we think happened is that, there were seeds that were dormant. And so the water from the high flow event and from the constant were able to germinate these seeds. And so we started to see some new populations popping up. Well, no, sorry, we haven't seen new populations pop up. That's something that we're concerned about. But I think that it also may have washed some of the plants away. The other thing that happened in this year is that we weren't able to coordinate with the Hualapai tribe in time, and so we were unable to work on Hualapai tribal lands that year. So smaller numbers that year. Next slide, please. And then to last year, this year, you can see the number of plants went up just a little bit again. Again, that might have to do with that high flow event and constant higher flow in 23. We also were able to work with Highlands again this year. We have a good collaboration going with them now. So that also increased the number of plants. And we did get 43 of our plants were from one site. They were a bunch of small, tiny little baby plants. But again, you can see our new population, we only found one this year, which was great. Next slide, please. So some considerations and next steps. Complete eradication is not going to be possible. I mean, it really isn't in this sort of a large landscape level ecosystem project, but significant control is definitely possible. And I think that we've demonstrated that in the last 5 years. We don't really know the effects of these dam releases and flows on plant growth and establishment. So it'll be really interesting to kind of track this over the next few years and continue to go and revisit these sites and see how many new plants are popping up. And we really saw over this 5 years the importance of continuing to monitor each year and to try to do that for several more years going forward. Next slide. So with that, I thank you all so much for your financial support in this project. And thanks also for letting me present towards the end of your meeting. I was facilitating for Friends of the Verde this morning, so I appreciate you letting me come in late. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Does any member of the commission wish to be heard? Virtual members first? Anyone who is a virtual member wish to be heard?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is Commissioner Thompson.
You're recognized.
So you mentioned, you talked about it a little bit, but like when it was high flow times, it was a lot of the grass submerged, and did it end up killing the grass once submerged?
Yeah, that is a good question. We didn't actually see any evidence of it killing the grass while it was submerged. We haven't seen that yet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other member who's attending virtually? Seeing none. Any questions from the commission present in person? No. No action necessary, is that correct? That's correct. Mr. McMaster, we want to thank you for your time and effort. We appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the next item is call for future agenda items. Any member of the commission wish to be heard in recommendation for future agenda items? Hearing none?
I think we just had hers for the, was it that you wanted the?
Did you?
Or, the hell did she ask for? For our interest, the,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
You want to? Yeah,
sorry for.
make sure it's, yeah. I thought we, just so we'll make it clear, ask for a report on our interest.
Oh,
Process
yes,
it.
okay, yes.
amounts.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I'd like to know what the rate of interest that we receive.
okay.
Or I don't know that it's just particularly for the Water Protection Fund, but
Overall. Okay.
overall, yes.
Mr. Chairman, this is Steve.
Yes, Steve.
If I may,
You're
I might add some light to this. I'm one of my other elected positions, I'm chairman of a fire district. And we get interest the same way. It is our main account is through the county, and it's based on a percentage. The county puts all their money essentially into a general fund, and then it invests it. And I could see, I get a report every month of my investment interest that I get. And generally, say if there's say $500,000 in there in my allotted account in the general fund, which is very similar to what the Water Protection Fund should have in the general fund, they will take a percentage of that on their interest, and it varies. And usually, it depends on the either the municipality, the city, or the county, and the state. They have a separate investment division that utilizes the funds. And I see stuff from Wells Fargo money markets to other investment funds, et cetera. They're generally very conservative. And for example, I think I've got 500,000 in our fire account right now, and it runs anywhere up to $40,000 to $75,000 a year that we get on those various. But it's generally just they take the big number, because it's all invested in one pot, and then they will take our 500 and give us a percentage of that, basically. And I think that that's what the state government does as well. So maybe that adds a little bit of light, but that's the way the most of the cities that I've worked with and the counties work with.
Thank you. Any other future items? We're done. We'll go to the next item, which is future meeting dates. The director, did you have some suggestion for our June meeting?
Well, I guess, no, I don't have any specific dates. I'll let the commission put those out. But as far as agenda items, and approving the grant cycle, if we're going to be doing something in May, again, I guess just to allude back to a comment I made earlier, do we need like an executive committee approval date on that, or we're going with what the dates?
I think we took action here.
Well, just as long as we.
Trusting you.
Okay, well,
We said
set it up.
We said May, you got 4 weeks to deal with.
Okay. Okay, just want to make sure I understood the commission didn't want to take any more action on that.
I'd let us all know as soon as you know.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. What dates? So I'll pull up the dates.
Pull up in June. What works for you? This is your busy time. That's why I called on you.
So June, the Tuesdays, if the commission wants to continue meeting on Tuesdays, again, we can meet at any day of the month, but on Tuesdays in June are the 3rd, 10th, 17th, and 24th. For me, those dates don't, any date is good for me.
Looking at the grant cycle, the portal for the grants to be submitted would be in June. Is that correct?
That would be.
With the May date starting?
Well, the May date, I would probably just make the applications open. I usually give people a couple of weeks just to have the manual to read through it. The portal, I could usually open that up. I want to give at least a month or so for applicants to upload everything.
I'm just trying to see is if we have a June meeting, which is just before the portal opens, would that be a help to you? Or
I don't think it would make any difference. If it's not there,
what's
if it's up,
convenient for us?
yeah, if it's there, I'll let you know. If not, it'll be up soon, shortly thereafter. So
as a chair, I'll suggest June 10th, and then for matter of discussion.
June 11th. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I thought Tuesday was June 10th.
My dates are, let's jump into my calendar. I'm sorry, June 10th. You're correct, sorry.
I concur with that one.
Any problem with June 10th? A hearing none?
This is Steve. I got a minor surgery that day.
Well,
June 3rd.
How about 17th?
3rd or 17th or 24th is good.
17th? Ruben?
June 17th. Okay.
June 17th. I don't think we need a motion to do it.
No.
Okay. The next item is one of my favorite things. Is there any member of the public who wishes to be heard? This is your time and place to be heard. Any member of the public? Hearing none, we'll go to the next item. There being no further business to come before this commission, I declare it adjourned. Huh?
Perfect.
Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you all
Time.
for interested in, well,